What I want to speak about today, very succinctly, the 4 S's of parenting, okay? And especially for us as dads. I'm a counselor by training, is what I do all week, and full-time therapist, and just my office pretty much looks like all of us every day. 8, 9 hours every day seeing men that look just like us. And I'm the director down at the Houston Center for Christian Counseling. Been doing that for multiple decades. But when Brett asked me this year to speak, I wanted to capture something, of what are the things that I see that go on that we as men struggle with that most of us wish, either our parents had been able to do for us, or that our kids, years from now aren't sitting across from, my protege at some point saying, I wish my dad had done this. So, and I've found that these 4 S's are not original to me, but they're worth knowing about. And that is these 4 S's. First of all, I saw this little quote this week, and I thought kind of captures it, why we talk about this. It says, our relationship to ourselves is often a mirror of how we are related to by our primary caregiver. Our relationship to ourselves, basically how we see ourselves, is determined oftentimes by how our primary caregiver, which is our parent, our dads, see us. How we, basically we determine what we're like by how do I see that my parent sees me. So I develop an image. If I think my dad thinks that, I'm a mess, if he thinks I'm awesome, I develop that sense of self-image. And so, and oftentimes, a lot of my counseling ends up being trying to fix some of the brokenness that we received oftentimes from our dads. And I grew up in that kind of home. I bet some of you did. Mine was alcoholic. And, we end up having to overcome it. And can we? Sure, we can. But, if we have a few tools, maybe it'd be helpful for us to be able to usher our kids into a place where they're not having to compensate and figure out and fix all the brokenness. So the 4 S's, and I'll tell them to you right up front, and then I'm going to go in and fill in the blanks, all right? Safety is the first one. Are we safe? Seen, do our parents see us? Do we see our kids? Secure, and soothed. Actually, when I present it, I'll do the last 2 the other way. The secure will be the last one, but soothed and then secure. So the first one, safety. Are we giving our kiddos a sense of safety? We can look and see some rough experiences with, kids that are in inner city experiences or whatever that may look like, oh yeah, that's obviously not safe. But in terms of emotional safety, so physical safety, yes, emotional safety. I watch how many times, my wife and I were eating at Treebeards here. Y'all probably have all eaten at the new Treebeards there at the Bunker Hill building there. And we're sitting there eating, and I'm watching this, very memorial type family, and there's probably a couple families, and I'm watching this dad at the head of the table, and another dad, and moms, and you know what it looks like, all these kids running around. And I'm watching this dad, and I'm watching him talk to this child. Now, he's dressed in his Patagonia. He looks, he's all memorialized. But I'm watching how he's talking to this kid. At some point, I felt like I just wanted to get up and go over, like, dude, you're doing a lot of damage. This little kid's like 4 or 5 years old, and he's doing what 4 or 5 year old little boys do, and they're kind of bumping up and down, and, and he's like, would you, and his face, was conveying so much anger at this boy. Now, this issue of safe, was he feeling safe? The dad doesn't know. He's conveying that this is not a safe environment, that dad is not a safe person. Everything about it. We know the nature of communication. We call it the 55-38-7 rule. 55% of what we communicate comes through our body language. 38% is our tone of voice. So my body language is all of you're reading me right now. You're reading everything that, other than my words, you're making assessments about what I'm like, who, what, where, am I believable, all of that. You're making judgments about it. We do it all the time. We do it on Sunday morning with off and with, it's just the nature of it. 38 is that tone of voice. What does that tone of voice sound like? Is it nurturing? Is it strong? Is it overwhelming? And then 7% are the actual words. So we got to be aware of what is our body language, tone of voice, because that is huge in this process. So I'm watching this process, and everything about this guy's body language, what this little boy is seeing with his dad, and he's communicating, would you sit down and eat your lunch? And, clenched jaw, and the tone of voice, and, again, typical family that we might be going to church with, and this boy is growing up without a sense of safety, whether he knows it or not. And honestly, I'm watching, I'm like, this boy was just doing what 4 or 5-year-old boys do, having seen a couple of them myself, raised a couple of them. So we have to, this sense of safety is, Rachel, you dropped something. You're welcome. Just happened to see that moment. And that we have to avoid, we have to work at us not being perceived as a threat, as harmful. And there is just a lot of this that goes on. I looked at my schedule yesterday, seeing 10 different clients, and I looked at how many of them dealt with father issues growing up in middle class or above, and 8 of the 10 clients I saw were situations where dads had some negative experience in this adult's life. And again, it looked like all of us in here. I'm older than most of you, but it was somewhere along this gamut. And everybody's dealing with the fallout of that. And so, the sense of safety, and we all mess up. How many in here have messed up with your kids, right? All of us have. We say things, we fly off the handle. I can remember being so angry at my son, my younger boy up at A&M one day, and he was just such a little knucklehead at one point, and I'm just sitting there talking to and listening to him, and I just remember crunching my glasses. Like, I didn't want to verbally, I was just so angry at what he was doing. I mean, but do we fix this breach? Do we fix it? Do we repair it? Do we come back and apologize? Sometimes it's about as complicated as, hey, dude, I'm sorry. That was my bad. I'm sorry. Come here. Will you forgive me? I mean, it doesn't take a lot of times to fix the problem. Our kids are very forgiving. So part of safety is just fixing the breaches when we've created those. Thoughts? I'll keep moving along, but any initial clarifications? Okay, let's keep going. I wrote in here, every child has a built-in survival instinct, and kids are sensitive and responsive to the caregiver. When safety is established, less time and energy are devoted to being vigilant for threats. Therefore, the child has more coping resources for interacting. So what was I getting at? I just wanted to basically be able to convey that when our children aren't worried about the safety in the home, it's amazing how much more energy they can put into just being focused on growing up. But when a child, because we're all meant to be survivors, children will put that kind of energy. So if dad's alcoholic, if dad's drinking too much, if mom and dad are arguing a lot, if unrelated to alcohol, if, arguments about work, this, that, and the other, and kids are sizing it up. They're taking it in. They're watching what's happening, and they're putting it together as, is this safe? And they don't know the words, but they are assessing their environment to determine whether, in fact, this feels like a safe place. And if not, they're taking that energy away from growing and natural development, and they have to focus on this. And this is where we get developmentally stuck. This is where I watch we as men emotionally get developmentally stuck many times, is because either there was unsafety in the home, unsafety at school, and there's bullying, things like this, and kids get stuck emotionally, and it's like all that energy is put into what do I need to do to survive internally, addictions develop, all kinds of stuff to basically bring that sense of okayness, because we want to be safe, we want to feel safe. Okay, the next one is seen. I'm just real aware of our time, so I'll just buzz right along here. This to be seen, safety, and then seen. That our kids are wanting to be seen, need to be seen. Are we taking time to just observe our children, really being aware of what's going on in their life? Are we stopping, the age-old struggle here, right, is how much time, how busy all of us are in raising kids, and I have full empathy for it, believe me. Lived there with raising 4 children myself, and how just crazy busy a Saturday like this can be, right? Where's everybody else? I guess it's soccer games, basketball games, whatever. I mean, it's just complicated. But the importance of stopping to really know what's going on with our kiddos and to get down into their world, whatever that is. If they're 3 and 4 years old, their world is, little dolls and little gadgets and little something, or, I remember one of my boys, he loved to go out and get naked and cover himself with mud. I'd come out like, Grant, what's up, bud? It's so fun, Dad, And it was just like, that was his world. And having to allow myself to enter into his world that he's seen and feels like, yeah, my dad knows me. I would just say, the word here is curious. One of my favorite counseling words, just curious. Stay curious about your wife. Stay curious about your kids. What's making them tick? What's going on in their world? If there's something happening and they're acting out in some way, to constantly stay curious. What does this mean? To develop an awareness of always staying curious. As a counselor, it's one of my best tools. I just stay curious about everything. Every behavior has a reason. Everything that's being done has a reason behind it. And so, are we staying curious and observant, and our kids feel seen? Like, we have to create opportunities for our kids to be seen. How many of them say, Dad, look at this. And again, when you get on this side of the curve to watch how many times I'm out again in public, being curious and seeing culture myself, and how many it's like, give me a minute, leave me alone. It's just, and Dad, look. There's such a yearning for this S in our kids' lives, grandkids' lives, that they want to be seen, they want to be known. Do I matter? I was struck this week, I was watching, there's a message on social media. I think that's what Rachel and James just did, something, I think, if that's what they were doing, I think. But anyway, social media, and it was showing how, this was by a secular psychologist out of UCLA, and he was looking at mental health issues and where they were statistically wise. I won't go into it. Bottom line was, 2012, all of a sudden you see this precipitous drop in mental health, increase in depression, anxiety, suicide, and it was like, wait a minute, cell phones came out before 2012. What was going on? Social media. And I couldn't help but to think about it in light of being seen. What is it? I can go to TikTok and, selfie, and everything else. This